So, Anne, where and when were you born?
I was born November 25th, 1956, in London, Ontario.
So that makes you a Sagittarian?
Oh, very much, yes.
Very much. How so?
Oh, I have a lot of the characteristics of the Sagittarius. The very inquiring mind, wanting to know. All kinds of possibilities are part of being a Sagittarius and things like that. So, yeah.
That was the most numerous typology of the visionary scientists, the 65 visionary scientists that I interviewed. The
Really?
top was, yeah, because they ask deep questions, are curious. It makes total sense.
Yeah, it does make me.
What about you?
I was born July 3rd, 1950, in a small town, well, it's an industrial town called Arvida, Quebec, in Canada.
Oh, in Quebec. Vous parlez bien le français,
Yeah,
n'est-ce pas?
I used to, but not so much anymore.
Uh-huh. And
I've been away from Quebec for more than 30 years.
oh, that's a long time. Was your family French in their origins?
No, they were not. They were from Winnipeg, Manitoba. They were prairie people.
Hmm. But when you grew up, you were bilingual because you had French immersion in school?
I did. My father was worked for Alcan Aluminum, and so he got a job in Arvida. Now we grew up mostly in the English community in Arvida because many of the people were. Um, but yes, I did take French. Not, back then they didn't have immersion as much as they do now, but certainly French was very much a part of the curriculum.
But you also left early.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean I left Quebec when I was 16 years old.
Oh, got it. And then what kind of
Oh,
No,
sorry, I got that wrong. I was 16 when I left. I actually lived part of my life in northern British Columbia, and then when I was 16, I moved to Montreal,
Back to.
back to Quebec.
Yeah.
So yes,
and then what about your career path? What have you followed in that area?
so I went to university to study art. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts,
Hmm.
which, upon completing my degree, I came to the very startling realization that I was never going to make a living as an artist. I wasn't talented enough because I went to school with some very talented people, but I got into graphics and advertising. So that's been my career path, which I've enjoyed a great deal. I started off working for a print company and was an apprentice working for a print company, and eventually opened my own business.
Wonderful. If you don't mind, I'll send you 3 possible images for the cover for this book later, and just get your critique and see what you
Sure.
think.
Happy to do it.
He's very good at that.
Yeah, I figured I would love that. So, Anne, you majored in chemistry, but you didn't really become a chemist. Is that
Oh, I
accurate?
did. I worked as a research chemist for several years. Yeah.
Ah,
And I actually have a patent. Well, actually, I don't have it. The company owns it, but it was my work. So yeah, I worked as a research chemist for quite some time until as the babies started to arrive, I just wanted to be home at that point in time. So, and I knew by then that I really didn't want to be a chemist, or at least in that company. One of the really awesome managers in that company said to me, "You know, they will never promote you because you're a woman." And so they were right. I understood that that's what they were going to do. So it made it easier for me to say, okay, I think I'm done with that chapter and stay home with my kids.
so what decade was that where they were out front about saying that? Because they wouldn't say it recently. They do it, but not say it.
No, that's right. It would have been the early 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Oh.
Now, he said it he said it to me. And like, not my manager, not my, but one of the guys there that I'd gotten to know. And he just said, "You're working so hard, but you got to know this is not going to happen."
Mm.
And I thought, I appreciated it.
Yeah, he was being
Yeah.
friendly. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you're both in your second marriage. So what did you learn from the first? Whoever wants to take that. Why did you marry your first, and what did you learn from it that made you a better partner, I'm assuming?
Well, actually,
Oh my goodness.
well, we both worked very hard after the demise of our first marriages. And
Yes.
It's one of the things that we really appreciate. Both of us got extensive counseling, helped us to understand this kind of thing. So what I learned, at first I thought my first marriage was a failure. I don't call it that anymore. I can see now I married someone who was highly ambitious, very driven, and didn't really have time for family and kids and wives and things like that. At the same time, that drivenness on his part allowed me to stay home with my kids, which I really wanted to do. And then when he really needed to move on because he felt that he needed to pursue his business more and things like that, I was free to do other things. And I know now that I would never have gone back to Holos had I stayed married to him. My life would have looked completely different. So I have to say, I'm really grateful. I have learned to be myself is part of what I've learned out of this. But also you learn what matters, what really matters in a relationship. And the fact that Hal is verbal and we can talk and have good discussions and conversations, those things matter to me a great deal. And that was one of the things that was very true. Also, he had his own business too, but his family were very important. So I saw a different way of being in that. That would be my take on it, I think.
Wait, who initiated the divorce?
For me, my husband. He left. He is the poster boy for climbing the top and climbing the ladder and getting to the top and doing all of those kinds of things. And that was where his energy and his time went. And he's done really well. I'm glad that he's done well because that was his path in life. I think that the path that we had that brought us together gave us these kids that were awesome. And then the paths needed to diverge, which opened other possibilities for us.
And you had 3 kids?
Yes. 3 kids in 3.5 years. Well, 4 years. Yeah.
No wonder you wanted to stay home. Oh my goodness.
I did. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Oh goodness. Hal, why did you marry your first wife, and what have you learned?
Well, she was sort of when I moved from Quebec, or when I moved to Quebec, I guess, I moved in. We moved outside of Montreal into a suburban community, and because I'd been educated in British Columbia, the education systems were very, very different, and I happened to end up in a math class and an algebra class that I had never understood algebra. I'd never seen algebra before, but I sat behind this pretty girl with curly blonde hair kind of thing. And so I was able to, it started off literally I don't understand this. I'd never seen it before, but now I'm in this algebra class. Anyway, she helped me some. I got to know her, and she was pretty and she was funny and a little bit I don't know, just she attracted me, and we got to know each other. And we had a very, even prior to getting married, we had a very tumultuous courtship. It was on again, off again a million times. Her parents really liked me. So that was kind of, they kept persuading her, I think, to patch things up with me. And we finally got married. and in the early years, I think we had some good times. We had 2 children, so my kids are a little bit older than Anne's. But I don't know. I learned somewhere along the way, our ability to communicate completely deteriorated, and to the point that every time we would go anywhere and we would talk about anything, anytime I made a statement or even an observation about something, she would turn it on me into an attack. We would be going down the street and she would say, "Do you think that girl's pretty?" And if I said yes, then it was an onslaught of, it was just like, so what I learned was to stop talking. And I said, "Oh, what girl? I never saw her." And so everything just became, just sweep it aside, sweep it aside, sweep it aside. And so the relationship became fairly contentious. At one point later in life, my mother, who got to know Anne later on, unbeknownst to me, said to Anne that she thought that I'd spent a good deal of my life fighting. And I had, and part of it was fighting for my own survival, because I couldn't be a normal human being. I was always on the defensive. Much of the time, there were a lot of sort of unpredictable things going on. And when we had kids, I found that very disruptive to have this unpredictable behavior when the children don't need that. They need stable parents. They need a guide. They need someone they can look up to and follow and absolutely count on. And they couldn't do that with their mother. So I became a very stable force for them. I guess I learned that was not a way I wanted to live. I didn't want to live that way. So, and I initiated the divorce. No, she did. She did. She finally came home one day. She'd been away on a week-long retreat, and she came home and she laid it out very bluntly. "That's it. We're over. I'm leaving. But I'm going to take 6 months to figure out what I'm going to do." And I said, "No, you're not. You're gone tomorrow. Pack your stuff and get out."
PJ differences here. Yeah.
And then did she leave the kids with you, or how did you
She had little or no interest in the kids. The kids were always mine. They were always attached to me because I was engaged with them. And she had gone back to school as well, and while she was doing school work, especially on weekends, especially up here, like every Sunday, the kids and I would go off and we'd go cross-country skiing. I'd put dinner in the oven, timed oven, and we'd go off skiing for the afternoon. I had a wonderful time. And this went on for quite a few years. And she just separated herself from that. I got to the point where I liked to go down south get away from the Canadian winter for a winter holiday, and wanted her to go, and she wouldn't. And so I went with an old friend of mine and took the kids. So they and their uncle, quote uncle, and we went down south for a week and got away from the Canadian winter. And so that, I was always engaged with the kids. So
you met her when you were around 16?
Yes.
And then how old were you both when you got married?
I was 23. She was 22.
Oh, so you did have a long courtship. Sometimes when things are back and forth, unpredictable, it's exciting, it feels really good when you get back together because of the separation and the drama. So that can be kind of addicting. Do you think that kind of dynamic had anything to do with marrying her?
There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of drama. What I didn't realize at the time, is how destructive it was. My parents at that time were out west in Vancouver, and I remember this very. This was a point where we were not together, with her, and I had gone out for a couple of weeks to just see my parents and spend time with them and stuff. And when I was back, I happened to meet her on the bus that went from where we lived into Montreal, and she, came and chatted with me and sat beside me and was astonished that I had been away for a couple of weeks and she hadn't known. And I was like, well, why would I tell you? We're not together.
Did she ever remarry?
No.
She wanted to be free, totally free.
She had a number of relationships. None of them have stuck.
And your first husband never remarried because he just wanted to
He
focus.
did.
Oh, he did.
He did, but they are both very driven and business focused and things like that, and so I think that resonated for them.
So how old were you two when you met, and how did you two meet?
You mean the two of us?
Yes.
Well, I was, I don't know, 37, 38, somewhere in there.
I guess.
Yeah, and this is actually a little bit of a funny story because we met at church. But the reason we met at church was because my ex-husband was on the committee that brought his ex-wife to the church. And so that's how they ended up in Guelph. Like when you think about it, a little girl from, southwestern Ontario and some kid that started in Quebec and went to BC and ended up how on earth would we ever connect? Well, that was exactly how it happened. And so we got to know each other just as friends for a long time through church and through different committees.
And then what changed it to be a romance?
Well, to be truthful, we talked about this earlier, and one of the things is when we first met, neither one of us had any romantic interest in the other one at all because we had other partners.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in the choir, and was in the choir. I joined the choir. We sort of knew each other, but not particularly well.
Then we got to be good friends because we worked on a lot of committees together.
Yeah, we did.
And also, we were both going through the end of a marriage around the same time and things like that. So, we would talk about that. How are you dealing with the kids? What do you think about this? We would talk about, we were a resource for each other, I think.
Yeah.
And I was quite clear that I was not looking for anything else, partly because I didn't want to lose an awesome friend. What happened if it didn't work out?
Oh.
And that was very concerning for me. And so I said no for a long time. And when we were both through, most of things shifted. Probably because I allowed them to shift. Yeah.
So when the divorces were final, then you could have procedure.
They weren't even final at that point, but it was very clear that the marriages were over.
Right.
I'd separated.
The paperwork wasn't all done.
But my wife had moved on and Jim had moved on.
Yeah.
And then, how long was it after you met that you decided to get married?
3 or 4 years?
3.
Ish?
Yeah, 3. About 3.
Yeah. Well, after we got together.
Yeah.
Not after we met.
No, not after we met.
It was a lot longer than that after we met, but about 3 years after we got together.
Yeah. When we first started seeing each other, about 3 years after we actually sort of said.
Yeah.
I talked her into a couple of times going down on those winter vacations that I like to take to get away from the Canadian winter. And I think it was the third time we were away. And, you know, it wasn't wildly romantic, but we were on the beach, and I sort of said, what are we doing? Let's get married.
But the funny corollary to that, the funny corollary to that is we got home, and the friends who have been staying with our kids said, oh, so, you know, what happened? And they were kind of looking to see had we gotten engaged while we were away. And, you know, they knew that we had concerns. This had to be okay with the kids. It had to be good and all that kind of stuff. And they largely said to us, the kids are saying, I wish they'd get on with it. We're like, oh, okay, this is all going to work.
So we actually did get engaged while we were away.
Yeah.
And, but we had sort of thought about a year and a half to get everything organized,
Not rush anybody.
We got home and said that our friends basically decided for us, no, in 6 months you got to get this done. The kids are waiting.
The kids are ready, and that was a big deal to hear it from someone else too. Yeah.
So we had 6 months to pull it all together.
Did the kids go back and forth to Jim's, Anne, or did you mostly have the kids? Your kids?
I mostly had the kids. They went sometimes, and my thing always was they should have access to their dad. I had primary custody, and they should always have access to their dad. My belief is that kids should always know their parents. I never badmouthed him or anything like that. My thing is they get to make their decisions about who he is, and if they get to know him, they will know that. And so they went back and forth, but I had primary custody.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So when you moved in together, how old were all 5 kids?
They were 11 to 21.
Was it 11 or 9 to 19?
Well, hang on.
Hang on. We have to do some math.
Okay.
No, 85 to 97. They'd have not had his birthday yet.
Yeah, okay.
So it would be 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
She was right.
Yeah.
Well, traditionally, the hardest part of a step family is the kids, and the kids say, you're not my father, you're not my mother, you can't tell me what to do, or they try to break apart the couple. But that doesn't sound like you had those issues, that your kids wanted you to be together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest question when we sat them all down to tell them for sure and start to make plans, one of our daughters said, well, whose cutlery will we use? These were the questions they were concerned about. And she was, 19 at the time, or 18. This is one of those things where the kids knew each other again because they knew each other from church.
Mm.
They didn't know each other well because they were significantly different in age. As when you're a teenager, 5 years difference is a big deal. But they did know each other. They knew who they were. And we had done things back and forth together. So that part wasn't, I'm sure all of them had their questions, and they all had stuff they had to work through. No question about that. But overall, we didn't get a lot of the big pushback about don't do this or that shouldn't happen.
One of them worried about cutlery, the other one excited about dresses for the wedding.
Yeah.
That's great. And I know that you believe in karma, that we attract major relationships and situations so that we can grow. Do you feel there was some kind of karmic or even past life connection with Hal, or what was the kind of karmic connection, the reason for getting together?
I think that this was the relationship I really came to have.
We both agree with that.
Because this has such give and take to it. There's such support of each other in this relationship. I don't know of any karmic, per se, reason that we're together. But what I know is that I have been able to do what I needed to do and become who I want to become and needed to become, partly because of this relationship, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And so that sense of it, and we had a lot of stuff. I feel like we had to gather up a lot of those details from those old lives first So the first marriages were sort of finishing up some of those details from earlier. And then we did our learning and we did the counseling and we got into that place where we could get into the relationship that would carry us forward.
Yeah.
So Hal, what have you learned from being with Anne? Why do you think your spirit said, I want to spend my life with her?
The simplest thing to say that I've learned from Anne is everything. I honestly am nowhere near the same person that I used to be. My ex, if she actually got to know me again, she wouldn't know who I was.
But she'd like you.
I don't care.
I know, but I just think it's nice. I think she would.
But I learned to, first of all, it was safe to talk and express myself and be who I wanted to be, to share both my thoughts and my feelings and not be attacked. I mean, that was huge in my life.
It's huge.
Yeah, and to be valued because I had something worth saying, I guess. And so part of it, I think we both feel this, but I'll say it, we both kind of grow into who we're supposed to be with each other. And so, I don't know, I'm just overall, I'm a much more content person. I stopped fighting life. I don't have to fight anymore. And so I'm a much calmer person. I'm a much more compassionate feeling person than I used to be.
Sometimes the first marriage is a reaction to or a repeat of our parents' relationship. Were they in any way a drama team, or what was the pattern of your own parents' relationship?
My parents, I didn't grow up with a lot of drama. I grew up on a farm. I loved being on the farm. Farm work is very grounding. It's very, authentic. I also grew up in this awesome little, outside this awesome little village. We had, wonderful music teachers, and we had a choir that I've sung with, always sung in a choir. And so we had a lot of extras that added in that made, my growing up time wonderful. My parents had a good relationship. There was a big difference in age between my parents. And so my dad died, again, quite a bit before my mom. But no, I would say that there wasn't a lot of drama at all in my family growing up. We had a lot of illness in my family, but not relationship drama.
Yeah, I was thinking more of that for Hal. But was your father in some ways distant or unavailable like Jim?
He wasn't distant or unavailable. He was certainly an introvert. He was quiet. But he worked, we grew up, our family was not well-to-do. And so, as well as being a farmer, he worked as a master carpenter. And so he was gone a lot. But not because he chose to, but because he needed to. Difference.
Yes, to support the family.
Yeah.
How? What about your parents? Drama or no drama?
There was drama, for sure. My parents did separate when I was maybe 17. And there was quite a bit of drama leading up to that. I think I wasn't aware of what was going on in the background for quite a few years, but it had been obviously going on for a while. My mother was very, very nurturing, and I think she kept a bunch of this stuff from us, but it got to the point where it just started boiling over, and I from the bedroom that I had in the house we were living in, it was sort of next to the living room, and after I'd gone to bed at night, I could hear them arguing down in the living room, and that certainly caused a great deal of emotional turmoil for me. And my first wife certainly was very caring and supportive because I was going through a lot of, family trauma and struggling to deal with it. And she was certainly very supportive and caring during that time.
But then she went into her drama mode, the critical.
Yes, that was later in life. Well, yeah.
When you had 5 kids living together, how did you organize cooking, cleaning, dishes, all that? Because that's a lot of mouths to feed and work.
It is.
Yeah. We actually just kind of sorted it out as we went. One of the things that we agreed on is that we were not moving into either house. We were going to buy a different house that belonged to everybody. Probably the house that I'd been living in would have held us all, but then there's territory.
Yeah.
It's somebody's territory, and so we didn't do that. We bought a house. When we bought the house, we made it conditional on the fact that the kids would agree and
Approve of it.
the kids went out and we all looked at it. We did those things. So at the beginning, I was home. I was the primary caregiver, meal maker, all of those kinds of things. And Hal was still working in Toronto, so he had quite a commute every day, and that was part of how we chose our location for the house that we bought too. And so basically, I don't think we raised our kids dramatically differently that way.
No, I don't
They
think so
all knew
either.
that there would be responsibilities, that they would have stuff they had to do.
You don't just lay around.
Yeah, and so, little by little, we sorted that out. Now, we did do things like we had cleaners. So you need to keep things picked up, you need to keep it tidy, but somebody else is actually going to do the cleaning, which meant that we didn't have to argue over who did that.
We also bought, when the house that we bought, that we chose, and we'd seen it first, we had sort of some very specific criteria in order not to have the kids living on top of each other.
Yeah.
We ended up buying a fairly large house so that every kid had his own bedroom. Mm-hmm. And most of them had their own bathroom too. I mean, It was that kind of a house. So, and so they all had their own private space, which we thought was really, really important. And so I think that was a very wise decision that we made.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a schedule, and did you just do all the cooking and they cleaned up, or how? It seems with that many people, it needs to have some kind of structure.
Well, there was basically, I organized the meals, but they would come and help. Somebody would be helping before dinner, somebody would help with the dishes, somebody would help with, and it was more of a flow than a structure.
Oh.
Our oldest son he would leave for work sort of at dinner time because he worked in a restaurant at that point.
Yeah.
And so he needed to be fed and out of there, but he got his own meals a lot of the time, or he'd eat leftovers from the night before or things like that. And then again, so the kids, after a few years, they started heading off to university and school and things like that. So there wasn't ever a schedule. There wasn't ever anything like that. It was just, I need some help. Who's going to help with dinner? Who's going to help do this? And this day, we don't ever do dishes for a family meal. The kids do them all now.
Yeah. And I guess more than a schedule, I think, as Anne was pointing out, we had an expectation.
Yeah, and they knew it. And they were good.
It's just, you were expected to help, whether it was before or after a meal.
Yeah.
Did you have similar levels for discipline, how strict to be or how permissive to be? Because that can be a conflict area. Usually the stepfather comes in and says, I'm going to shape up this family and get things in order.
Oh, we were so lucky we didn't do that.
No, we developed our own early on system to deal with the kids. And one of the things that we've had a very good time about is talking together about how we're going to do things. And so that I think we mostly presented a fairly united front to the kids. Mm-hmm. But it was always, if it was my son who was in trouble or my daughter who was in trouble, we would go and talk about it. But the biological parent was the one who went and spoke to the kid.
Or at least began that conversation.
Yeah. And if they wanted the other partner involved, that was fine. But, if Jillian needed talking to, I started the conversation. And
And
then,
over time, it shifted.
oh yeah,
you
they,
know, so
they
that-
sort of, it became, it's you two. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to have this conversation.
But in the beginning, it felt respectful to the kids to begin with that. So that's how we did that.
Yeah. Plus, we hadn't, as I said, our parenting skills weren't so different that sort of the disciplinary levels were not wildly askew.
The biggest difference probably was that Hal's kids were late teens, my kids were early teens. And so the structure for the two different age groups was a little bit different. And that was okay. That because of the age difference, it's easier to understand that, everybody doesn't have to be in at 9 o'clock because, he's 19 and I'm 12, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what have been areas where you've had conflict, if any, where you've disagreed?
Well, we don't have to agree on anything. We are very easy about, discussing things, seeing how that works for both of us. If it's Hal's thing and it feels really important to him, and even if it's not something that I am particularly interested in, I'm okay with that. We're really good at that. I think it wasn't a disagreement at all. My biggest thing was when I went back to grad school. Hal had retired by that point in time, and he wanted to retire. That was important to him. But I couldn't quite imagine that it would be okay for me to just say, oh, great, I'm going to take off for grad school now for 4 years and leave you with everything. But in the long run, that's exactly what we did. Hal was awesome.
Can I tell a story?
Sure.
We had talked about Anne going back to grad school for 8 months.
I was being very thorough.
Non-stop. Just always, she examines every single corner of every single issue. And 8 months of this was going on. And finally, I got fed up with it. I said, for God's sake, shut up and register. Just go.
But the next piece of that is, I did that, and I got in within the last couple of days of getting in for the fall semester at Hollis.
Yeah.
So the timing was just, funny. So that was one of our biggest senses of, okay, because this is going to be a big shift for our family.
Yeah.
To me, that was one of the big deals.
But we talked it all out. We talked about how the dominoes were going to fall, how the change of responsibilities was going to happen.
We're both J's.
Yes.
Which is an enormously comforting thing when you're making change, because we both like to plan and we both like to organize.
So and you're ENFJ?
I and FJ.
Really?
Oh, I know. I do E very well. The world is always surprised, but I strongly need that quiet time.
Hal, what are you?
So I just did the test.
So right now,
I used to be an ESTJ.
Wow.
But now I'm an ENFJ.
Interesting. So you took the test when you were younger and were an ST.
Yes.
but if you think about it, when he was trying to maintain some form of control or whatever in a family, he needed to use those skills when he felt like he was the one holding everything together. And then when he did not have to do that any longer, the other characteristics sort of came back.
And I'm also nowhere near as much of an E as I used to be.
True. Yeah.
I value my quieter time and downtime and time with just the two of us. We cherish, in spite of all the problems with COVID, we just look at each other and say, there's no one in the world we'd rather spend our time with than each other.
No question.
So,
yeah.
You don't have any kids at home at this point, I'm assuming.
no, we do not.
No, they're all married and off.
How many grandchildren?
7. Our oldest turned 10 today.
Yeah.
And are they near enough so that they're part of your life, or are they scattered, the grandchildren?
They're scattered. We have to work at that. So we have 3 in Nova Scotia, so out on the East Coast. We have 2 in Ottawa, so kind of 6 to 8 hours depending on traffic and everything else. But we have 2 that are in Georgetown who are 40 minutes away. So we try hard to stay connected in the best ways we can, but that has been a struggle with COVID for sure.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for Zoom and Skype and all that.
You got it. Yeah.
So Anne, I'm assuming that the burden of graduate school, you were mostly at home because it's a fairly virtual program. So it was just that you had to kind of lock yourself up and study and do the coursework and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that was not a problem for me at all. I am very disciplined. When I focus, I very much focus. I had to say to my sweetheart, honey, you have to imagine that I'm away at school.
Yeah.
Right? You can't come and talk to me every 20 minutes. You need to, you need to do that.
What?
You got on.
What's the other term she uses? She says, look, I'm approaching this like it's my job. So I am away at the office from 9 until 5. Don't bug me.
Wow.
I said, okay, well, at the new house we were living in, it was a large property, it was a large home, there was a lot to do, and it's not like I didn't have tons of things to keep me occupied, so.
For sure, yeah. And then the travel down for a week in the spring and the fall. The nice thing was that I didn't go. Our youngest went to university the year that I went back to grad school. So there was nobody living at home when I did that.
Me and the dog. Me and the dog.
Was it?
A dog's. Were they both of them there by
Oh, I don't know whether we had 2 or 1 at that point, yeah.
Perfect. And then Anne, what is your degree and what's your specialty and what are you doing with it in terms of your profession?
So I have 2 PhDs. I actually have a THD in spiritual healing and a PhD in energetic medicine. My specialty is really the emotional spiritual aspects of wellness on all levels. And I had done a lot of training and did a lot of modalities on the physical as well. But we got lots of people in this area that do that. And I'm really happy to focus on the emotional spiritual. So I created my own little company, and I, through word of mouth only, have built a clientele and work with people, and I find it fascinating, and it's a great honor in my world to work with people like that are interested in exploring those areas.
What is your business name?
Life Energy Balance.
But you don't have a website, so
I don't.
She's so busy. She doesn't need to be hooking people through the internet. It's all been word of mouth from the beginning. Even before you went to school, you were helping people. You were working with people.
I was, for sure.
Yeah.
But it was important to me that because this, especially the spiritual work, I wanted it well grounded. I did not want to be, off in Never Never Land somewhere and not have this work grounded, because to me, I think that's important. And so that was, for me, was the degree. To say, I need to know about this. I really need to know what I'm talking about. I need to understand it thoroughly. And Holo certainly did that for me. I love the inner counselor. That's what I used for my dissertation.
What is that?
I love it. Inner counselor is a process by which you access your own inner wisdom. So if somebody has an issue and you say to them, well, why don't you try this? Inside you may be saying, well, but you don't know this part, and you don't know that part. And that's true. But when you work with your own inner wisdom, you know all those pieces of yourself. And it's a symbolic process, so you can access things without having to relive everything or go through the details again. You just need to know how you feel physically and what emotions were attached. And you can work through major issues very successfully.
Can you give us... Go ahead, Hal.
Gail, one of the fun things that happened while Anne was in school for those 4 years is I was the guinea pig for every new modality she studied. So I got to do lots of this stuff. So.
Fun. Could you give us a case study of, say, a client with a relationship pattern issue that you did inner counselor work with, and how did it get resolved? So if you give us an example, then we can, maybe people who listen can apply it to their own issue.
Sure. So imagine a couple who cannot agree on how to approach discussions, disagreements, those kinds of things. And this particular woman was really angry at her husband because she felt he was controlling. He was trying to control her. He was trying to, and so when you do this, you then say, imagine a recent time. So a recent time was the other day. We had an argument. He was trying to tell me what to do. You look at the emotions and the sensations, and then you ride those back to an earlier time. And as she got farther and farther back, what she realized was she didn't want to take control of her life. This was coming out of her fear that maybe she wasn't able to do that. And so then she had looked for someone who would very much help her with those things, but then she resented him for it. And understanding that piece made all the difference, because then she knew that she had to grow herself up. It doesn't help to yell at him. To expand that part of her so that she would understand that, and then be able to either move into a more equal relationship or say, you know what, maybe this isn't something we're going to do long term. But you're making it from that point of view of having far more information and understanding.
Is there a book or an author that's connected with the inner counselor approach?
Absolutely. Anne Nunley. Who was one of the founders of Holos.
Yeah.
She wrote the book on Inner Counselor, and she has done the most beautiful paintings of the different, she's written so much awesome background on it. The courses are fabulous. You can also do transpersonal. You can add in generations forward and backwards as you're looking at issues. So things that you say, oh, well, my mother was like that, or my grandmother was like that, you can change that. You can make a difference for all of the family. And so it's just really a fabulous course. You can apply it in so many ways.
Are there other approaches that you've used in your work with counselors that people might like to know about?
Oh, I work with lots of things. I like to think I've got a big toolbox, and whatever the appropriate tool is for the client that comes in, that's what we use. So I work with past life regressions, with energy balancing, just straight energy balancing. If there are guides or angels that are wanting to come and talk, if there is someone that you love who has passed over, who has something to offer to you, we access that wisdom and that availability. I do some just straight life coaching, problem solving in the here and now about what's going on as well. I do therapeutic touch is one of the ones that I use. Of course, therapeutic touch is not, you don't have to touch anybody. One of the gifts of therapeutic touch in this time is you can do it distance. So that's been a huge, wonderful thing during COVID. I'm trying to even think of all the other things that I do. I work with that whole sense of body, mind, and spirit together, and where it takes us.
What about the energy psychology tapping? Do you
Yes,
use that?
absolutely. I don't do a lot of the tapping myself. I think because I'm a dominant intuitive, those things sort of come for me. But I can certainly teach it. I understand the tapping. Energy psychology is amazing, and being able to access those ways of accessing our inner self. I mean, inner counselor really is one of the forms of energy psychology as well. Yeah.
What patterns do you see in terms of couple issues among your clients? Do you see patterns that they make the same, I don't know, mistake is the right word, but they bring the same issues into you?
Well, one thing that I learned from Carolyn Mace while I was at Holos, she taught us, and I think this came from her when she was doing medical intuition. She said the first time she saw something, it was new. The second time she saw something, she recognized it and she could, use what she'd learned in the first. And the third time you see it, you better know what's going on and be able to just move with it. So I often find that pattern. I'll see things in threes if they're new. But right now, things have changed over this time. I think people are asking far more spiritual questions through the time of COVID than they did before. And I don't know whether it is just that they've had more time to think, or whether COVID brought some fear that they wanted to look at some of these things. But people look at all kinds of things. Oftentimes people will come to say, have we lived together before? Have we had a life together before? We need to know these things. Or they will say, I've had couples come to say, we think we're going to separate, and we just want to do it as consciously as we can, or as well as we can, if that's the case. Not all of them separate, by the way.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, when they bring those things to consciousness, then that makes the difference, and there's not the need to separate at that point in time. I deal with lots of families. So moms that have, kids that aren't getting along or are struggling, and particularly right now, families that used to kind of go off in their own directions all day and come together for dinner aren't doing that, and now we have to look at those things. So working with lots of those things as well. Yeah.
I'll send you my little book, Calm Parents and Children, a guidebook. It might be useful to some of those.
Wonderful. That'd be great. Yeah.
How do you keep a long-term relationship interesting, romantic, a little sparkle? How do you keep it from getting routine or boring?
You have to be conscious. It's a choice, like so many things in life. It's a choice. One of the things I think we talked about talking with you last week, and one of the things that we've always had is we don't have all the same interests. Anne does her things and I do my things, and at the end of the day, we have our own unique experiences to contribute to the relationship, because we're not joined at the hip with everything that we do. And even within our own church community, Anne has certain skills and gifts that she uses, and I do a whole set of other things. But it's still for our church community. So I can talk about what I've been doing, and she can talk about what she's been doing, and it's all new and fresh. So that's part of the interest.
But the best part is I married a romantic. So, when you got... he has always done thoughtful things. For me, it's the little things. Just those little everyday things. I don't need 24 roses, but a flower. Things like that are wonderful. It's the little touches, the gentle connections, all of those things that make the deeper connection even more important. Yeah.
We said, like I'm saying just yesterday, we in the evenings, if we sit and watch TV, you'll see us sitting right where we are right now on this love seat, and we hold hands all night. There have been times when she's sort of said on Valentine's Day, you don't need to bring me flowers. And I just look at her and say, that's never going to happen. So, that I can't go past Valentine's Day without getting you the roses. So it's a given. I don't care. I hear you. I'm not listening.
I've learned to not fight that battle. Yeah. I'm not going to win that one.
That's a good battle to lose.
We also do things like, when our anniversary comes along or special occasions, even if it's just the two of us, we try to make sure we have a romantic dinner, even if we're just at home and cooking something, But, we set a lovely table and set the candlelight on and stuff, and have a glass of wine, and we just chat. We just talk about our lives and, what's happening with the kids and the grandkids and things that we want, So
we actually, because this is a second marriage, we didn't have a honeymoon and then, years with no kids to just, play and enjoy. We had a bunch of teenagers, and so we had to learn early on. You choose this. We've taken vacations, we get away, we do things like that as well. Yeah. So when we are able, and we had to learn to make it a priority.
You make it a priority, and part of it is, I think, as Anne said, it's everyday thoughtfulness that counts.
Yeah.
Can you give guys some tips? Roses on Valentine's Day, special dinners on anniversary. What else is
But those are the big things, right? Those are the special things. I don't think it's the special things that are the sort of the glue that holds it all together. I think it is the little things. It's saying I love you as often as you can remember. To I anticipate things that Anne is going to need and want, especially because I'm the one now doing most of the meals while she's working. She's still seeing clients in the afternoon, so I prepare the dinner. But sometimes she works late in the day. And so I have my little systems of, while I can't hear what she's talking about, I can hear the voices murmuring in her office. I can see the cars parked in the driveway. I know that when the car leaves at the end of the day, there's about a half an hour and dinner needs to be ready, right? Because she needs to wind down, finish up. But that's what I do. And, it's just stuff like that. I don't know. It's just a myriad little things.
It is.
Of being
but it's
thoughtful.
just, you go by and there's just, an arm that goes down, or there's a, snuggling at night.
Yeah.
Just making that time to be close,
Yeah.
making that time to do those things. You're really good at that. You're good at cherishing.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I cherish my
know,
time with you.
but you're very good at showing me that. Yeah.
What about the physical expression of love? Is there a way to keep that interesting over time, or is that not really the goal?
Well, it changes.
Yeah.
It changes.
That's
It
the whole
definitely
thing.
changes.
Yeah.
We're certainly considerably older than when we got together.
Bodies change.
Yeah.
Everything.
And
Needs change.
Needs change.
But so I think that's the biggest thing, being able to go with that, so that I know there are lots of books out there that you can have the best sex of your life when you're 70 or 80 or whatever it is. That's not my goal. My goal is to have the most meaningful sex, the most meaningful relationship, and whatever that looks like at different times. That matters. But again, that comes back to that sense of making that connection matter. Because if the connection is good, then it gets expressed in lots of different ways.
Yeah. And it's not always the sex either.
Right.
It really is, as we said, we rarely, sometimes, one of us will go to bed earlier than the other, but we rarely get into bed without some physical contact before we turn out the lights and go to sleep.
Yeah.
So.
Nice. For some couples, money is an issue. One's a saver, one's a spender. They have conflicts over that. How do you organize your investing, money, bills, finances?
Together.
It's changed. It changes back and forth.
Yeah.
But like the most parts of our relationship, we talk about it before anything major happens.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of at this point in our lives too. I mean, I've been retired for quite a while, so I don't have an income. So budgeting has become more important. But we are able to sit down and say, what are the priorities and how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
For instance, I'll give a small example. We're at this house. One of the things that when we put the house out in where we used to live with the kids when they were all at home, one of the things we did, because we were out in the country, is we put in a big swimming pool. And we built some change rooms for the kids to bring their friends, and so the kids could not be in the house to change and leave all their stuff lying around, but they could be over there. But the pool was a gathering place, and so when we bought this new house, we've been here 6 years now after the kids had gone, and they were gone for a while after we were still down there. It took us a while to sell the other house, but one of the things we looked for was a house with another pool, and it has been a huge calling card. However, the liner in the pool was old. And so at the end, we got through last summer, and we were fortunate to bubble with the grandkids that lived nearby. So they were here a lot because we were in their COVID bubble. And it was wonderful, but the pool liner gave out, and it started to rip on one corner. I've been patching it for a couple of years when little things happen, but it's done. So we just sort of said, okay, what are we going to do? This is an important meeting place for the family around the pool. And so we said, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to budget for it, and we're going to. So we basically have all the money saved up. We put a deposit down, and in early May, we're getting a new liner. It'll give us another great few. Well, it'll give us lots of more summers with a very important. We're sort of the hub where the kids come together. The family comes together here.
Nice. So did they all think of themselves as siblings? They must.
I think they do mostly, yes. I think that they call us the parents. We are the parents, you know. And you know, when we think of them, they're pretty much interconnected in a lot of ways. It
enriched everybody's lives.
I think so.
We think so.
I think so for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the grandkids, the cousins, can play together.
That's the nice thing. And that's one of the great things about being able to be here, and they can come and the kids can play. One of the things we do is we stopped buying Christmas presents for the adults a few years ago. And we save that money, and every other year we go to the cottage together as a family. Everybody goes. So we have a whole week to be together, and the kids can play together and to do all of those things. And we figured that we're creating memories instead of buying stuff. The kids don't need stuff. They have all the stuff they need. And so that time together, that's when you get to know them. They live in very different areas. And so, you know, it's one of those really nice things when we have that time, when we can be able to do that. So that, again, that's a choice to say, well, that's where we're going to spend our money. We don't have infinite money to spend on everything, but let's make a choice and let's do that.
Yeah. It's really an old lodge, and it has all the amenities that we're 19, the members of this, just us and our kids and grandkids. We're 19, and so it needs to be a big place, and it's perfect for us, and we love it, and unfortunately we can't go this year because of COVID.
No. We'll miss this year, but that's okay. We'll figure. They've all agreed. The kids said we can't take a chance on booking the cottage and losing it. But if it opens up, they'll all come and tent on the lawn, and there's lots of lawn, and swim in the pool, and we can get together that way.
We'll do something else as things get better.
So how long have you been married now? How long?
22 years we've been married now.
That's wonderful.
Been together 25.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to look for areas of tension or conflict in your relationship, but I really haven't heard of any. And that seems like you're human. There must be something, but it sounds like you just discuss everything that might be a difference.
That's exactly it.
Well, here's the thing. We also, early on, a couple of things I want to mention here. We agreed that we don't have to agree on everything. It's okay to disagree. It's agreeable to disagree. And part of it is, I can get very set in my methodical ways of doing things, but, and especially when the kids were still living at home, she used to sort of say, do you want them to do it? Or do you want to do it yourself your own way? I want them to do it. She said, then let them do it. It'll be fine.
And it was.
Yeah. And so I've learned that along the way, that not everything has to be done my way. I may think my way's the best and it works for me, but it's not necessary. One of the other early tools that we discovered was in talking with each other. This is one of our, I remember telling this to someone else, but when we have disagreed and we've been having a discussion and we've said something, and you know at that moment when it comes out of your mouth and you know it didn't come out right. So from early on, we gave each other permission for a do-over.
Oh.
And what we asked the other person was, wipe the slate clean, forget everything that I said there, and let me try again. Mm-hmm. And we always gave each other permission to do that.
And sometimes it took several do-overs until we felt that we had actually said what we meant.
Oh, yeah.
And that they were understanding it the way we had meant it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It's been huge.
And you just say, "Oops, let's do a do-over."
No.
Do-over.
Yeah, that didn't come out right. I want a do-over.
Yep.
And it has worked extremely well. I remember telling somebody else about this medical professional, actually, and this woman was like absolutely astonished. She said, "I've never heard of such a thing." And I said, "Will you try it?" And it's a marvelous thing. Just
It
to
works
say,
so well.
but you have to be willing when your partner asks you to let go of what you said and heard. You have to let it go of all the emotion. You have to let it go.
I think that's part of trust. You have to trust that they're really being honest, that they really didn't mean that it came out wrong, and they genuinely want to try again. And to me, that makes a huge difference, but it also builds trust, because then you don't fight about things that are really not the issue. You're able to come back to what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any goals or plans for the next 5-10 years, bucket lists that you haven't done that you want to as a couple?
Oh, there's all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, we want to do more travel as soon as that's possible. What other things are on our bucket list?
Well, it'll be an interesting time, because sometime probably I haven't retired. All of our friends now are retired. I have chosen not to. I'm happy to do what I do, so I'm going to keep doing it as long as it feels right. But that would be a shift at some point in time, to see what happens with that. We went to Machu Picchu a few years ago, and that was amazing.
What an awesome experience.
So finding some of those high energy points in the world and visiting those that experience is incredible, and there are so many of them. So that would be a really interesting thing for us. When we get to visit, I mean, again, being able to spend more time with family and grandkids and things like that would be wonderful. We don't have there's not a lot of stuff that we want or things like that. It's more about experiences, I think, life experiences. Yeah.
We had, like I said, when we got married and we had all the kids with us, we bought a very large house on a very large property, and we were there for 18 years, and it was a lot of work and a lot of fun. We had fantastic parties for our friends over there, and now we're in a house that, as we say, 99% of the time is perfect for the two of us, and we renovated to put Anne's office in the basement, which is it's actually above ground where it is. But so she's basically, she works downstairs, and we have what we need.
We're pretty content.
Yeah,
we're pretty content where we are and as we are.
Yeah.
What other high energy places do you think of besides Machu Picchu that call you?
Well, I think I know that in Africa there are a few of them. Things like some of the high energy places in Lourdes in France, and some of those places that are, I think there are some high energy places in the Mideast. I'd be a little bit worried about being there right now, so unless I felt comfortable about those things. But honestly, they are everywhere. South America is quite amazing. Getting into the Andes was phenomenal. So yeah, lots of different places that you can visit.
Yeah. We a couple of years ago we went to Scotland too, which was a calling card. It was an energy draw for you to go there too.
The Highlands of Scotland.
The Highlands. We just had a wonderful 2-week vacation there.
The energy in the Highlands is like no place else. It's really quite amazing. Yeah, very ancient, very grounded.
Oh, like the Celtic lore and all that mystical.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. They're highly connected.
Last question. Any other advice for a young couple starting out that you haven't mentioned that you think, oh yeah, they really should think about da-da-da?
Like each other. Be each other's friend. Start there. Our world has made weddings and the dresses and all of these things into such a big deal, and it's easy for young couples to get caught up in that, and that's one day, and it's wonderful to make it special and important, no question. And at the same time, to be able to say, what matters is that you really like this person.
Yeah.
Down the road, this is a person that you admire, that you respect, that you trust, who allows you to be and to grow into the fullness of who you are.
Yeah.
To me, that's those places. Be willing to be flexible. Explore together. Yeah. What do you think?
And I think that part of what we've done well over the years too is we each sort of have things that we're excited about, and so we each take turn. Like, I hadn't particularly thought about going to Machu Picchu, but Anne was very excited. She and her girlfriend got very, very committed to going. And what we were hearing is that, and the site was being overrun, and so they were restricting access. And we wanted to go before it got too restrictive and we couldn't experience it. And so the four of us, the two couples got together and we talked about it, and we found an amazing tour company they just did an outstanding job for us. And unlike a lot of the tours, we got to be on the site for 2 half days instead of 1. And, but I wasn't particularly...
Wasn't your bucket list?
No, it wasn't my bucket list, but boy, did I ever enjoy it when I got there. It was a fabulous trip. Fabulous.
What about guides, angelic helpers? Is there a way that this young couple, hypothetical couple, could call on them to get some help and guidance? How do they know that they have angelic and helping guides out there that they can call?
Well, we all have. So you can count on the fact you've got them. And yes, sometimes that's a great way to access that wisdom, especially if we're looking for that, or access your own high self. Go into your own high self to look from a different perspective and to see. I think if they have a comfort level with that, or find somebody that they trust. Find somebody that they believe that would be able to access that with them. To me, that it's great. Also, sometimes this is where you get. I had one young woman, and she was working on this issue, and her great aunt Lillian came, and she looked at me and she's like, "Well, I do not like my great aunt Lillian. I don't know what she's doing here." And great aunt Lillian said, "Oh, honey, you're just like me." And all of a sudden, she got it. And it was awesome. So, you get these things and it's like, okay. And then when she started realizing all the things she didn't like about Great Aunt Lillian, she needed to look at it herself. She learned an enormous amount. And Great Aunt Lillian was spectacular. She was a feisty old girl that was just had it. And I just love being able to work with them together. Yeah.
I think one of the other things too is I'm not sure that a lot of young people are even aware that they have guides to help them. I mean, it was much later in life before I even embraced the idea. And one of the things, I used to have things happen which I couldn't explain, and one of my great joys was Anne helped me understand those things. But it was much later in life before I realized that there were guides there.
Mm-hmm.
What's an example of something you felt guided to do or to think about, where you thought, that's not just my conscious mind?
But your angel.
When I was out walking the dog.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that happened to me. This was before we were together.
Mm-hmm.
But I was out walking my dog one night in the wintertime. And I used to go out sort of it was kind of a parkland in behind the houses and near some railway tracks. And I was walking along. I'd walked this path every day for a long time because it was a great little spot to go and I could let the dog off the leash. And I was on my way back home, and all of a sudden I was aware of a blue light around me, a light blue light around me. And it was just...
it was calming.
It was really calming, yeah.
Because you were distressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was sort of one of my first experiences.
But you didn't know what it was at the
No,
time.
I
You just accepted that for whatever reason you felt better
Yeah,
with that
yeah, yeah.
light. But as he and I talked about it later, the angel just came and said, "Yeah, hi, I'm back," sort of thing. And so it was clear that
She has a much stronger connection to these guides and angels than I do.
But so it was lovely to be able. One of the things that Hal had experiences but no language for them.
Yes.
So to be able to help fill in that language was great. Yeah.
You suggested accessing your higher self, but how does one do that?
Oh, it's not hard at all. And there are actually, you can take very specific steps of imagining, focusing in your heart center and bringing your awareness up to your brow chakra, moving in and then turning 90 degrees and coming up to just above your head. So some people who like to visualize and the guided sense of that will do well with that. Mostly if you just take your attention and bring it just above your head, just above that top chakra, and ask, high self, I want to connect to high self. You'll connect very easily. I think most of this is so much easier than a lot of people think it is. And so doing it the way it works for you is always great.
Great. That's a good note to end on. Thank you. Thank you.